Title: I shouldn't have opened that door. True story: last night, someone knocked on my door at 2:17 a.m., and I made the worst mistake of my life. Chapter 1: The knock at 2:17 a.m. I remember the exact time because I checked my phone the moment the knocking started. 2:17 a.m. That alone was enough to make my stomach tighten. I wasn't expecting anyone. I wasn't waiting for anyone. And at that hour, there are only a few kinds of people who knock on doors, and none of them bring anything good. At first, I thought I imagined it. Just a faint tap, tap. I stayed still on my bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling, listening. My apartment was small, a one-bedroom unit on the third floor of an old building. The kind with thin walls, creaky pipes, and neighbors you could hear but never really know. Then it came again. Knock, knock. Clear this time. Slow. Deliberate. Not loud. Not urgent. Just intentional. I sat up. Every instinct told me to ignore it. People don't knock like that unless they know exactly what they're doing. And somehow, that made it worse. I grabbed my phone and checked again. 2:18 a.m. Probably the wrong apartment, I whispered to myself, even though I didn't believe it. The knocking came a third time. This time, it was followed by silence so thick it felt like the entire building was holding its breath. I got off the bed. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe that irrational part of the human brain that needs answers, even when danger is obvious. Or maybe, something else. I stepped into the hallway, careful not to make noise. The wooden floor creaked anyway, it always did, and the sound felt louder than usual. As I got closer to the door, I noticed something strange. No footsteps. No shuffling. No sound of someone waiting outside. Just, nothing. I leaned closer and looked through the peephole. Darkness. The hallway light outside my apartment was out again. It flickered sometimes, but this was different. It wasn't flickering. It was just, off. I squinted, trying to make out a shape, a shadow, anything. Nothing. My heart started beating faster. Hello? I called out, my voice quieter than I intended. No response. I waited. Still nothing. I should have walked away. Locked the door. Gone back to bed. Pretended it never happened. But instead, I reached for the handle. Even now, I don't fully understand why. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the feeling that whoever, or whatever, had knocked was still there, just out of sight. Or maybe I had already made the mistake before I even touched the door. I unlocked it. The sound of the lock clicking felt unnaturally loud in the stillness. Then I opened the door. Slowly. The hallway outside was empty. No one. No movement. Just a dim emergency light at the far end casting long, stretched shadows across the floor. I stepped out slightly, looking left, then right. Nothing. I even leaned out further, checking near the staircase. Still nothing. Hello? I said again, louder this time. My voice echoed faintly down the corridor. No answer. A cold feeling settled in my chest. Not fear exactly. Something deeper. Like the realization that something wasn't right, not just the situation, but the logic of it. People don't just knock and disappear. I stepped back inside and closed the door. Locked it. Then locked it again, just to be sure. I stood there for a moment, staring at the door, waiting for another knock. It never came. Eventually, I went back to bed, though sleep isn't really the right word for what happened after. I lay there for hours, eyes open, replaying everything in my head. The knocking. The silence. The empty hallway. At some point, I convinced myself it was nothing. A neighbor. A prank. Maybe someone drunk on the wrong floor. By morning, it almost felt normal. Almost. The next day started like any other. Coffee. Emails. Work. I work from home, which meant I didn't have to leave the apartment. Normally, that was something I appreciated. That day, it felt different. The apartment felt smaller. Quieter. Like it was holding on to something from the night before. I tried to ignore it. Around noon, I went into the kitchen to make something to eat. That's when I noticed the cabinet. It was open. Just slightly. Now, I'm not the kind of person who forgets things like that. I live alone. Everything stays exactly where I leave it. I stared at it for a few seconds. Then I walked over and closed it. Just tired, I muttered. That had to be it. Lack of sleep. Overthinking. Letting my imagination run wild. I went back to work. An hour later, I heard something. A faint sound. From the hallway. Like, movement. I froze. Listened. Nothing. I stood up slowly and stepped out of my room. The hallway looked normal. Everything in place. The bathroom door was slightly open, just like I usually leave it. But something felt off. I walked closer. Pushed the bathroom door open. Empty. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "This is stupid," I said out loud. But my voice didn't sound convinced. That evening, I decided to take out the trash. I needed air. Needed to get out, even if just for a minute. I grabbed the bag and opened my front door. And froze. The hallway light was still out. Same as last night. That didn't make sense. Maintenance usually fixed things like that quickly. I stepped out anyway, locking the door behind me. As I walked toward the staircase, I felt it again. That feeling. Like I wasn't alone. I turned around quickly. Nothing. Just the long, dim hallway stretching behind me. I let out a nervous laugh and kept walking. When I came back, everything seemed normal. I unlocked my door. Stepped inside. Closed it. Locked it. Then I stopped. Something was wrong. I couldn't see it immediately. But I could feel it. The air felt different. Heavier. I walked slowly into the living room. Everything looked the same. Couch. Table. TV. But then I noticed it. The bedroom door. It was open. Wider than I had left it. I was sure of that. My heart started pounding again. Slowly, I walked toward it. Each step felt louder than it should. The floor creaked under my weight. I reached the doorway. And looked inside. Nothing. Empty. Exactly how it should be. I stood there for a long moment. Then shook my head. "Get a grip," I whispered. I turned away. That night, I made sure of something. Before going to bed, I checked everything. Doors. Windows. Closets. Under the bed. Everything. All clear. I locked my bedroom door. Something I had never done before. Then I lay down. Lights off. Silence. For a while, nothing happened. And slowly, I started to relax. Maybe it really was just in my head. Maybe. Tap. My eyes snapped open. The sound didn't come from the front door this time. It came from inside the apartment. From somewhere, close. I held my breath. Listened. Then it came again. Tap, tap. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just, there. And then, a sound that made my blood run cold. A slow, quiet movement. Right outside my bedroom door. Something, or someone, was in my apartment. And I had just locked myself in with it. Chapter 2, The Space Between Walls. I didn't move. I couldn't. Every muscle in my body locked the moment I heard it, that slow, deliberate movement just outside my bedroom door. It wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. That's what made it worse. Whoever, whatever, was out there, was being careful. The soft scrape of something shifting across the floor sent a chill crawling up my spine. Then silence again. I stared at the door. Waiting. Hoping it would stop. Hoping I had imagined it. Then. Tap. This time, it came from the door itself. Not a knock. Not quite. More like a test. Like something on the other side was checking if I was there. My throat went dry. I reached slowly for my phone on the bedside table, careful not to make any noise. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. 2:41 a.m. I hadn't even realized how much time had passed. For a moment, I considered calling someone. The police. A friend. Anyone. But what would I say? There's a noise in my apartment? They'd ask if I saw anyone. I hadn't. They'd ask if I was sure. I wasn't. And somehow, deep down, I didn't want to make a sound. Because whatever was outside that door, it didn't know I was awake. Yet. Minutes passed. Or maybe it was longer. Time didn't feel normal anymore. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Then, slowly, the sound of movement returned. Not near the door this time. Farther away. Moving through the apartment. Carefully. Deliberately. Like someone who knew exactly where everything was. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay still. Listen. That's all I could do. I heard it pass through the hallway. A faint shift near the living room. Then. The kitchen. A soft click. My stomach dropped. The cabinet. The same one I had found open earlier that day. It opened again. Then closed. Slowly. That was when something changed. The fear wasn't just fear anymore. It turned into something sharper. Something clearer. This wasn't random. This wasn't imagination. Someone was inside my apartment. And they had been there before. I needed to think. If I stayed in the room, I was trapped. If I opened the door, I could run. Or I could walk straight into whoever was out there. My eyes scanned the room. Window. 3rd floor. Too high. No way out. Closet. Useless. The only exit was the door. And whatever was outside it. Then I noticed something. The sound had stopped. Completely. No footsteps. No movement. Nothing. The silence returned. But this time, it felt different. Heavier. Closer. I stared at the door again. And that's when I saw it. The shadow. Barely visible at first. A faint darkness shifting under the gap between the door and the floor. Something was standing right outside. Perfectly still. Watching. Waiting. My heart slammed against my chest so hard I was sure they could hear it. The shadow didn't move. Didn't react. Just stayed there. As if it knew. Then, slowly, the handle began to turn. I froze. The metal clicked softly as it twisted downward. Once. Stopped. Then again. More force this time. But the door didn't open. Because I had locked it. A quiet pause followed. Then. A faint sound. Not movement. Not footsteps. Breathing. Right on the other side of the door. Close. Too close. I covered my mouth with my hand, trying to silence my own breathing. Tears burned at the edges of my eyes, but I didn't dare make a sound. The handle stopped moving. The shadow stayed. Then, after what felt like forever, it moved away. Slowly. Silently. The darkness under the door shifted and disappeared. I didn't move for a long time. Even after the apartment went completely quiet again. Even after I was sure, absolutely sure, there was no sound left. I stayed frozen in place. Listening. Waiting. At some point, exhaustion must have taken over. Because the next thing I remember was light. Morning. I jolted awake, sitting upright in bed. For a second, I didn't remember anything. Then it all came rushing back. The knocking. The shadow. The breathing. I looked at the door. Still closed. Still locked. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I grabbed my phone. No missed calls. No messages. Time, 8:12 a.m. For a moment, I wondered if it had all been a dream. But then I saw it. On the floor, near the door. Something small. Something I knew hadn't been there before. I got up slowly and walked toward it. Each step careful. Measured. Like the floor itself might betray me. I crouched down. And picked it up. A piece of fabric. Dark. Rough. Like it had been torn from clothing. My chest tightened. That didn't belong to me. I stood up and unlocked the door. Slowly. Carefully. Then I opened it. The apartment looked exactly how it always did. Nothing out of place. Nothing broken. Nothing stolen. But something was wrong. I could feel it. I moved through each room again. Checking. Searching. The living room. Nothing. The kitchen. Everything where it should be. The cabinet. Closed. I opened it. Empty. Then I reached the hallway. The narrow space between the rooms. And that's when I noticed it. The wall. At first glance, it looked normal. But the longer I stared, the more it didn't. There was a thin line running vertically along it. Too straight. Too clean. Like a seam. My breath caught. Slowly, I stepped closer. Raised my hand. And pressed against it. It moved. Just slightly. My heart started racing again. No, I whispered. But I already knew. This wasn't just a wall. It was a panel. A hidden one. I hesitated. Every instinct told me not to open it. Not to look. Not to confirm what I was already beginning to understand. But I couldn't stop. I gripped the edge of the panel. And pulled. It resisted at first. Then, with a soft crack, it opened. Darkness. A narrow space behind the wall. Just enough for someone to fit. My chest tightened as I leaned closer. And then I saw it. Blankets. Food wrappers. A small flashlight. Someone had been living there. Inside my apartment. Watching. Waiting. Moving when I wasn't looking. And then I noticed something else. At the back of the hidden space. Another opening. Leading deeper. I didn't hear the sound at first. But it was there. Faint. Slow. From inside the wall. Movement. I froze. Every instinct screaming at me to run. To get out. To leave everything behind. But my body wouldn't move. Because now I knew the truth. I hadn't imagined anything. I hadn't been alone. Not last night. Not yesterday. Not even before that. And then, from the darkness inside the wall, something shifted. Closer. Chapter 3, The Thing That Stayed. I couldn't breathe. The darkness inside the wall wasn't empty anymore. It was moving. A slow, subtle shift, like something adjusting its weight. The faint rustle of fabric. The sound of breath that wasn't mine. And it was getting closer. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But fear has a strange way of freezing you in place. My hand was still gripping the edge of the panel, my eyes locked on the narrow opening as if looking away would make it worse. Then, a shape. Not fully visible. Just the suggestion of something shifting deeper inside. A shadow bending against shadow. My heart pounded so violently it blurred my vision. Someone is in there. That thought finally broke whatever paralysis had taken hold of me. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet, my shoulder slamming into the opposite wall. The panel slipped from my hand and stayed half open, like a mouth that refused to close. I didn't wait. I turned and ran. The front door felt farther away than it ever had before. Every step echoed too loudly, every movement felt delayed, like I was running through water. I fumbled with the lock, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the key. Behind me? Nothing. No footsteps. No chasing. Just silence. And somehow, that was worse. Because it meant one thing. It wasn't in a hurry. I threw the door open and rushed into the hallway, not even bothering to close it behind me. The dim corridor stretched out in both directions, just as empty as it had been the night before. But this time, I didn't stop to look. I ran straight for the stairs. Down one flight. Then another. My legs burned, my lungs screamed, but I didn't stop until I burst out of the building and into the open air. The cold hit me like a shock. Morning traffic moved as usual. Cars passed. People walked. Life continued like nothing was wrong. Like I hadn't just discovered someone living inside my walls. Like something hadn't just moved inside that hidden space. I turned back toward the building. 3rd floor. My window. Still closed. Still quiet. Too quiet. I called the police. This time, I didn't hesitate. My voice shook as I explained everything, the knocking, the sounds, the hidden space. There was a pause on the other end, the kind that made you feel like they didn't fully believe you. But they said they'd come. Stay outside, the operator told me. I wasn't planning on going back in anyway. It felt like hours before they arrived, even though it couldn't have been more than 20 minutes. 2 officers stepped out of the car, their expressions calm but alert. I explained everything again, more clearly this time, pointing up toward my apartment. One of them nodded. All right. We'll take a look. They went in. And I stayed outside. Waiting. Watching the building like it might react. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Then 20. No one came out. A tight knot formed in my chest. Something wasn't right. Just as I was about to go back in, against every better instinct, the front door finally opened. The officers stepped out. But something had changed. Their calm expressions were gone. Replaced with something else. Something unsettled. Well? I asked, my voice barely steady. They exchanged a look before one of them spoke. You were right, he said. There's a space behind the wall. My stomach dropped. And? I pressed. He hesitated. Then said the words that still don't leave me. There's evidence someone's been staying there. A cold wave washed over me. Been? I repeated. What do you mean been? Another pause. Then. It's empty now. Empty. The word didn't make sense. It didn't fit. I stopped myself, my throat tightening. I heard something. This morning. It was there. The officer nodded slowly. We checked thoroughly. There's no one inside now. That's not possible, I said, shaking my head. There's another opening. It goes deeper. We found it, he interrupted. And? It connects to an old maintenance shaft. Runs between units. Probably hasn't been used in years. The world tilted slightly. You're saying, I swallowed. They can move through the walls? He didn't answer directly. But he didn't deny it either. They searched the building. Every floor. Every accessible space. Nothing. No sign of forced entry. No sign of anyone leaving. No one caught on cameras. Nothing. By the time they finished, the sun was already beginning to dip. I stood outside the entire time, refusing to go back in. Eventually, one of the officers approached me again. "You can stay somewhere else tonight," he suggested. "We'll file a report, notify management. They'll seal off that panel." "Will that stop them?" I asked. He hesitated, then said carefully, "It should." Should. That word didn't help. I didn't go back that night. Or the night after. I stayed in a hotel across town, trying to process everything, trying to convince myself it was over. That whoever had been in my apartment was gone. That it was finished. But on the third night, something happened. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The room was quiet. Safe. Different. Then, my phone buzzed. A notification. I frowned and picked it up. Unknown number. A message. No text. Just an image. My chest tightened as I opened it. And everything inside me went cold. It was my apartment. My bedroom. Taken from the corner near the ceiling. The angle. The angle from inside the wall. My hands started shaking uncontrollably. I zoomed in. The image was recent. Too recent. Because there, on the bed, was me. From the night before I left. Sleeping. Unaware. Another message came through. This time, text. Just 2 words. "You left." I couldn't move. Couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. Then, another message. "Why?" My vision blurred as I stared at the screen. A third message appeared. Slowly. Like whoever was typing it was taking their time. "I'm still here." The room around me suddenly felt too small. Too quiet. Too familiar. And then, from somewhere inside the hotel room, I heard it. Tap. Before you scroll, check your doors, check your walls, and if you heard something while watching this, you might not be alone. Subscribe for more true stories that should never have happened.